by a single, careless wave. Stranded 225 miles from civilization, wildlife photographer Carl McCunn's supplies dwindled, winter closed in, and his 100-page diary captured every frozen, starving day, until one last bullet ended the silence he'd trapped himself in. 34-year-old Carl McCunn was no amateur outdoorsman. He briefly served in the United States Army for 4 years before abandoning his military career to pursue his passion, wildlife photography. After his service, Carl supported himself with odd jobs as he began building his new career. In 1970, he moved from Seattle to Anchorage, Alaska, seeking greater opportunities in the remote wilderness. Carl ventured further into the wild as his passion deepened, eager to capture more breathtaking scenes. In his 1976 exploration, he survived 5 months on the Brooks Range, taking pictures, and because it was a successful voyage, he was bent on going for another. So in March 1981, Carl contracted a pilot to drop him off at a remote, unnamed lake in an equally unnamed valley, approximately 225 miles northeast of Fairbanks. This trip was to last 5 months, and in the inventory, he brought 500 rolls of film, 1,400 pounds of provisions, 2 rifles, and a shotgun. He also took a journal where he recorded seasonal migrations and marveled at how disconnected humans were from nature. After setting up camp, Carl became in sync with everything that was around him, and for some reason, he began to believe that he did not need his guns and that he brought too much ammunition. So he prematurely disposed of 5 boxes of shotgun shells in the river near his camp. In his words, he felt more like a warmonger than a photographer. The plan was to stay out there from March until early August. In his journal, Carl wrote that he had arranged for a friend who was a pilot to return for him in early August. But unknown to him, he never confirmed this return flight, and he would only find out later. With the mindset that at some point, someone would come to pick him up, Carl had no reason to worry for the first 5 months at least. Unaware that his arrangements were never finalized, Carl waited patiently. Still, he did not know that there was a problem until mid-August, when he began to second-guess himself. In his journal, he wrote, "I think I should have used more foresight about arranging my departure. I'll soon find out." And he did find out. As the days passed, there was no sign of rescue, and to make matters worse, his camp was also off the regular air traffic route, so he could not count on any planes passing by. At that point, he was almost out of food supplies, and the thoughts of the guns and ammunition that he had disposed of earlier would come to haunt him. Carl tried fishing with a net that he made with chains to make his inventory last longer. He ate rose hips to keep himself going, but his troubles were just starting. The temperature began to drop, and it began raining, and in his journal, he began panicking as he wrote, "Come on, please, don't leave me hanging and fretting like this. I didn't come out here for that." He hoped for a miracle, expecting his family and friends to look for him, having been gone for so long. Before he went on the voyage, he sent 3 maps showing where he would set up his camp to his friends and father. However, he never mentioned to them when he planned on returning. Earlier, he told his father not to worry if he didn't return at the end of the summer, because if things went well, he might stay longer. During the 1976 trip, when Carl stayed out longer than planned, his father, who was naturally worried, called the police to help search for Carl, fearing that something bad had happened. Still, when Carl was eventually found, he was upset and asked his father not to overreact next time. Now faced with a similar situation, it was understandable why his father did nothing. In Carl's journal, he prayed that someone in town would figure out that something must be wrong, since he was not yet back, and even wondered if no one cared, even though he gave them maps. Well, he was mistaken. Carl's friends had already reported to the Alaskan troopers, and a pilot, David Hamilton, was deployed to check on him. When the pilot flew to Carl's campsite, he could not see any sign of distress. To further complicate things, Carl was casually waving his red bag. And when the pilot was on his third flight over the campsite, he saw Carl walking back to his tent in an equally relaxed manner. The pilot then reported that he saw no reason to think Carl needed assistance. Meanwhile, when Carl first saw the pilot from the ground, he was naturally relieved. But when the plane flew over without landing, his joy quickly turned to dread, and he realized that he had made a grave mistake. In his diary, he recalled raising his right hand shoulder high and shaking his fist on the plane's second pass. He said it was a little cheer, like when one's team scored a touchdown, but he didn't know it was the signal for "all okay, do not wait." He also wrote that since the plane had wheels, he knew it couldn't land, so he stopped waving after its first pass and got busy packing things up and getting ready to break camp. But as sunset approached, he began to doubt if the pilot took him seriously. It was later that it dawned on Carl that he had only one chance of escape and had blown it. After that incident, Carl discovered a small cache of supplies, including rabbit snares and a few bits of candles, while digging a shallow trench to prepare for winter. He also had to travel for firewood, as he wanted to leave the land surrounding his camp the way he found it. The supplies he discovered didn't last him for too long. Food became increasingly scarce as time went by, and by that time, the warmth had disappeared as the cold gradually set in. Now, Carl was not only fighting against the freezing weather, but also with the wild animals, fighting for food. Time went by quickly, and November came. Now Carl found himself with no food. But here's what baffles people to this day. The trooper who marked Carl's map knew about a hunting cabin just 5 miles away. Many people have been asking why Carl didn't decide to walk there when the weather got colder and he ran out of supplies. Having waited so long in the freezing weather and lost his energy and motivation to frostbite in his hands, he lost the dexterity required to set his snares. He later wrote of having dizzy spells and almost constant chills. After a while, Carl could not take it any longer, and he finally decided to end his own life. He used all his remaining fuel supplies to create a warm fire. He wrote a prayer in his diary asking God to forgive his weakness and sins. He wrote a letter to his father instructing him on developing his film. He also requested that all his personal belongings be given to his father by whoever found him. Carl even suggested that the person who found him should take his rifle and shotgun for their trouble. He then pinned his Alaska driver's license to the note and shot himself with his rifle. Just before he took his own life, he went on to write his final entry, where he said he was burning the last of his emergency Coleman light and had just fed the fire the last of his split wood. He wrote that when the ashes cooled, he would crawl along with them. He said he chickened out once already, but didn't want to go through the chills again. His final writing was, "They say it doesn't hurt." After that, Carl then loaded his gun, and the gun went off, ending the life of the once energetic stranded traveler. Carl's friends became concerned about his absence, and it got to the point where they had to request that the authorities begin a search for him on January 19th. However, the authorities could not start their search until January 26th, when a state trooper flew over Carl's campsite. But they saw no signs of life due to the ambient temperature. The effort continued, though, and a ski-equipped plane carrying several state troopers landed at the lake to check the campsite on February 2nd, 1982. They found his tent zipped shut, and, upon cutting it open, they discovered his corpse, emaciated and frozen, together with his 100-page diary. Chris Capps, Fairbanks Daily News Miner reporter got access to the diary and 2 rolls of film from Carl's father, and some parts of the diary were published in December 1982 by the San Antonio Light.